Hello crafty friend, my name is Brittany. I'm the maker behind Ginger Patch Designs and the crochet kit that you have purchased. I want to welcome you and I'm so proud of you for taking this leap, this journey to try something new. Maybe you've always wanted to try it or you have tried it before and you've just become frustrated. My goal is to teach you and help you learn. So I'm going to make this intro really quick, just a few housekeeping things before we dive right in. This tutorial is for the pink strawberry chocolate cow or the black and white cow. I'm actually going to use the pink yarn that comes with this kit because in the video the colors are easier to see than the white. There are some troubleshooting clips at the end to help you get started, so I will leave the timestamp for the troubleshooting clips down in the description. If you're struggling to get started, I encourage you to fast forward to that troubleshooting clip to kind of help you get started and save you some frustration. Even if you do get frustrated, friends, crochet can be very challenging. Please don't give up. If you need to put it down and come back to it, or if you've tried several things and you need to shoot me a message, I'd be happy to help you to the best of my ability. You've got this. You are just a crafty ninja that hasn't suited up fully yet. I also wanted to mention that all of the stitches used in the pattern, I do go over them in the video. However, if you need to pause the video and you need a more slowed down, in-depth tutorial of how to do that specific stitch, you're welcome to pause the video, and down in the description below, I have links to each of those stitches. The videos are no more than 5 to 6, 7 minutes, something like that, that can probably help you out. Lastly, I encourage you to keep the tools that come with the kit, specifically the crochet hook. The most common mistake that I see crocheters make is using the wrong hook. Hooks matter, and the Clover brand hook that comes in this kit is top tier. It is what I use every single day for all of my projects. Now friends, I can't wait to see the final products of what you make. Make sure and tag us on their socials below so we can share your makes and kind of grow our crochet community here. So without further ado, let's get started. We're going to be starting with the large ball of yarn that has the crochet hook stuck in it. You're going to need a scissors that is not included in your kit. I have a pair of snips here, and then we just need one of our stitch markers. Now the starting chain stitch is already on the crochet hook for you. You might notice the tail that goes with it, so carefully take out your hook from the ball. Now if for some reason your starting chain comes off your crochet hook, you can put it back on if it hasn't unraveled yet, or I have links in the description on how to start a chain stitch. So unravel some of the yarn to give yourself some slack. Now this tutorial is completely for beginners, so I'm going to go very slow. So if you have crocheted before, you might just skip ahead some of these steps. Okay. I always like to hold the tail in these fingers right here, but you do whatever's most comfortable for you. Now you will often see a lot of people hold their yarn with this like over under situation, and that's fine. You can try that. I personally prefer what I call the cigarette style. It allows me to keep tension on my yarn and easily move my fingers wherever I want them to be. Okay, and then you'll notice in this hand I'm holding the hook very loosely, and then this pointer finger is going to be doing a lot of the work that you might not notice when you're watching tutorials. Okay, so these fingers and this finger is going to do a lot of the work. Now before we begin our first chain stitches, like the pattern says, I want you to watch what I'm doing. If you've already done chain stitches before, you go on right ahead and do what I'm doing. But if you have not, if you are a complete newbie, I want you to watch because I'm going to point out a few things that I see very common mistakes and people struggle with. Okay, I like to hold the whatever we call the working chain, whatever is on the hook is the working chain. I like to stabilize it with my fingers here, but again, you do whatever's comfortable for you, and then I use this pointer finger to guide. Okay, you're going to yarn over, and notice how I'm fixing my tension here, and then we're going to just pull it straight through that loop. Okay, now it's going to feel a little wonky because we don't have a lot to work with here. We're going to yarn over again, pull through. Now I made that motion look pretty easy, but some people struggle with it. So let's zoom in and look, watch the actual hook this time. Yarn over, and I'm turning it ever so slightly so that it doesn't get stuck on the loop that we want to pull through. Yarn over, turn so slightly. I'm using my fingers to just kind of push it almost through. Again, when we get more of a body to work with, you won't have to guide it as much, but while it's still this little baby piece, we've got to help it out a little bit. After you've chained 6, let's stop and count to make sure we have the right amount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we're ready to go back up the other side. We're going to be working up this row of stitches that we just created. Now this is your working stitch, and then there's a stitch right next to the one that's on your hook. You are not going to insert your hook in there. You're going to insert it in the second chain from the hook. Okay, so we're going to skip that one and we're going to go into this one. So curve your hook just a little bit, and I'm holding this because it is so small and it's going to just flip around if I don't. And you're going to insert your hook into that chain. And now I'm going to grab it and move it down more comfortable and get into working position. So now you have 2 loops on your hook. Now we're going to single crochet. The entire pattern uses single crochet increase, and single crochet decrease. A single crochet is the most basic stitch, and you're simply going to yarn over, pull through 1, so you still have 2 on your hook. You're still working in that same stitch, and you're going to yarn over, use your thumb and your pointer finger to help guide you, curve that hook, carefully pull through. Okay, let's try that again. Into the next stitch. This will be single crochet number 2. Grab your yarn, yarn over, pull through 1 loop. You still have 2 on your hook. Yarn over, curve your hook so it glides through just like that. Okay, now let's say that you mess that up. Okay, if you did not mess up, don't do what I'm about to do. I'm going to show those that maybe messed up, or their hook got stuck, or you didn't keep the 2 loops on the hook or whatever. This is the benefit of keeping your thumb on your work as you go. Okay, I'm going to take my hook out. You can just simply remove whatever stitch that you messed up. You can gently just take it out. And see that loop is right there. You can just put it right back in there. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's keep practicing our single crochet. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Now after you've single crocheted 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll have 1 left down here. Now if it looks like you have 2, you might need to just like tighten up that tail just a little bit, but you should have 1. And we're going to single crochet 3 in this same stitch. Now whenever you're at the end of a work, definitely want to use that thumb and use your other fingers to kind of stabilize it, because it will be a little bit wonky. We're going to single crochet 3 times in this 1 stitch. Right back in there. Three times. Okay. This is going to create like a curve that's going to allow us to go back around this way. Now this next part is a little tricky. I have placed a stitch marker, which you can do if it's helpful to you. If not, you can just watch what I'm doing. This is the same stitch that we just worked into. Where I have my thumb and where the stitch marker is, these are the 3 single crochets we just did. This is going to create the curve to allow us to go back this way. Okay, what we don't want to do is when we're trying to go back up this row, is to put our hook where we just finished working. That's why I put the stitch marker right there. We want to go in the next loop. So we're going to single crochet 4 up this other row. So skipping that stitch that we just finished on the previous row, I'm going to move my thumb over, and that's where we're going to insert our hook. And if you did put a stitch marker in, we can take that out in just a minute. And we're going to single crochet 4 up this other side. When you get to the last stitch, which is at the end, you've single crocheted 4 up this way, and now you're at the last stitch. We're going to single crochet again 3 times into that last stitch. Holding your thumb and using your forefinger to guide your work. 2, 3. Okay. Now, when we single crochet 3 in the same stitch, it forces our work to already be ready to go around again. It creates that curve just like it did on this side. It's imperative that we count our stitches at the end of each row, especially the first one, because if you don't have the right number of starting stitches, the rest of the pattern is going to get really confusing fast. And don't feel bad if you have to do what we in the crochet community call frogging. Frogging is where you have to take out some of your stitches and do it again, because I've been crocheting nearly my entire life and I still have to do that. So you should have 14 starting stitches all the way around. And we're going to insert our stitch marker at that last stitch before beginning on row 2. It should look like a nice little oval to get started. So this is the bottom, this is a finished piece. This is the bottom that we're working on right now. So we're going to work from the bottom going up the cow. The next few rows are fairly repetitive. We're just single crocheting like we've been doing, or single crochet increasing. Okay, so the row 2 is we're going to, in the next stitch next to our stitch marker, we're going to insert and single crochet once, and then the next stitch we're going to single crochet increase. And increase is where you single crochet 2 times in the same stitch. This is what increases the body of the cow. We're going to go in that same stitch, increase. And we're going to repeat that all the way around, just like the written instructions say. Single crochet, increase. Single crochet, increase. Now, when we're getting close to the end of the row, you should finish right on top of where that stitch marker is. You should finish your last increase. Now, whether you're a beginner or you're a seasoned crocheter, it is very, very helpful and beneficial to count your rows at the end of each row to make sure you didn't skip one or miss a stitch, because it will definitely show and become confusing later on in the pattern if our stitch counts are off. So we should have 21 total stitches. We're increasing by 7 on each row until we're not increasing anymore. So for round 2, we're going to do nearly the same thing, except we're going to single crochet 2 stitches and then increase all the way around. I'm going to put my last increase right here above where we've got the stitch marker. Okay, now it's definitely getting a nice oval now. So what we're going to do is move that stitch marker. Okay. Now again, count your stitches. You should have 28 total before moving on. Now round 4 is very, very similar. We're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase. The only difference in this row is we're going to do these stitches in what's called the back loop only. Now let me zoom in and show you. Each stitch has essentially 2 loops to it. Okay, I'm putting the needle right here to show you. There's actually a back loop and a front loop. When we single crochet, we go through both loops every time, but we are going to be single crocheting just in that one single back loop along the back side of your work. And what this is going to do is create a texture. If you see on the bottom of this finished cowl, you can see this line. This is where we worked in the back loop. And what this is going to do, it's going to help curve. We've been working on the bottom of the cowl. This is going to help it curve up to begin to create the full body of the cowl this way. So same thing, to the left of your stitch marker, you're going to insert your hook in this back loop only. Notice how I'm kind of holding it somewhat snugly, and I'm almost using my forefinger to just kind of make sure it gets in there nicely. Nothing wrong with that. As long as you have just that one loop on there from the back, you're good to go. Single crochet, just like usual, and again. Now what you're not doing is finding that back loop on the complete back side of the work. It should be like, almost like if this was a fence, it's right on top of the fence. It's literally right there on top of the fence. Right there. And there's a way to check to make sure that you're doing it right, and I'll show you in just a moment. So we've got 3 crochets there. You will begin to see that back loop line. You should start to see the line, Okay, this line, I keep calling it a line. These are the front loops that we left behind. These are the front loops that when we're regular single crocheting, we usually take those with us when we're crocheting. Now we're going to increase in the next one. And then continue all the way around 3 single crochets and then a single crochet increase. When you get to the end of row 4, just above the stitch marker here, you should be able to see the line of those front loops all the way around. Let's go ahead and move our stitch marker again. If we don't move our stitch marker each time, the original stitch marker would actually be like right here, and you might be able to see where the end stitch is. You might be able to see where the end row is, but I find for beginners especially, we need to move that stitch marker each time. So now, if you see on your written pattern, rounds 5 through 12 are just single crocheting all the way around. You're building that body all the way up from the back loop only. You should have 35 stitches by now, and you'll continue that 35 stitches all the way up. If you have 35 stitches all the way around, it's not necessary to count the end of each round on rounds 5 through 12 because it's going to be the same all the way around. So when you get close to the end of row 12, you can always double check because we left this stitch marker down here. To the left of the stitch marker, this is the beginning of row 5. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And it is okay to just eyeball where you need to end row 12. I need to add one more. Yep, that'll do it. And we're going to insert the other stitch marker that was included in your kit right there. And that is going to help us later. Now for round 13, we're going to single crochet 3 and then do a decrease. Single crochet, just like we've been doing. Now on a decrease, remember I showed you that there's actually 2 loops here. There's a back loop and a front loop. We're going to be using this front loop. A decrease is where we're slowly going to be bringing that body back together. So I want you to, so we're going to hold, I'm going to hold my work like this so you can see the top of the stitches. And I definitely use my extra fingers to kind of guide whenever I'm decreasing. So you're going to insert your hook in that front loop right there. So you should have this one and then the row 12 stitch. But we're not going to yarn over yet. You're going to grab the next front loop in the next stitch. Might be a little wonky, that's why I'm using my fingers to guide in there. So now I have 2 front loops and the row 12 stitch. Now I'm going to grab my yarn and yarn over. Now if you have never done a decrease before, I want you to watch so that you don't have to unnecessarily back your stitches out. I want you to watch. Definitely watch how I'm going to curve the hook, because it will get stuck on a decrease if you don't curve your hook ever so slightly. And then I almost push the yarn a little bit with my finger, pull through, and then I've got 2 left on the hook, yarn over again to finish that single crochet decrease. Let's watch that one more time. I'm going to do my 3 singles all the way across. Okay. That front loop, and then the front loop of the next stitch. So you've got the 2 front loops and the stitch you had from the last one. So you've got 2 front loops and then the working stitch. Going to yarn over, pull through, just pull through those 2 loops, front loops only, and then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2 loops. And you can almost see, if you look closely enough, how they're bunched together. But at a glance, it's nice and seamless and you really can't tell at all. There should be no lines or anything like down here on the back loop only. So if you need to pause the video, I encourage you to do that and go back and do those first few decreases. But we're going to continue that all the way around on round 13, 3 single crochets and a single crochet. Okay, so we're at the end of round 13, and now we're ready to do the eyes. For the eyes, you should have 2 black safety eyes, the safety eye backs, and the interfacing. This is actually sewer's interfacing, and it should have a tiny little hole in there that we will be inserting like this. For this step, it's going to be easier if we get our crochet hook out of the way. If you are terrified of taking your hook out, I get it, it's fine. Leave it in there, but what I'm going to do, make sure you always have enough slack. I'm gonna pull it out just a little so that that loop doesn't get lost, and then I'm just gonna lay it down. That loop, that big old loop is not gonna go anywhere. Now, because we did more of an oval start on the bottom, it should naturally, when you go like this, it should naturally just fold exactly where it's supposed to be, nice and flat. You'll notice your stitch markers a little bit on the top, and that's fine. The stitch markers are just to help us count the correct rows of where to place things. So laying flat, okay, with your oval at the bottom, we're gonna find rows 11 and 12. This was row 13, so this should be 12, 11. And the safety eyes are gonna go in between rows 11 and 12. Okay, now there's a few ways to find the middle of the work. You can eyeball it. You can literally eyeball it okay? And we're going to place this part of the safety eye in first and then just double check the center placement of it before we attach the backs and make it permanent. As a side note, once you put these on and they click, you can't get them off. The only way to get them off would be with pliers or to unravel your work and let them fall out. Safety eyes are going to be 6 stitches apart. So I'm going to start by counting 3 this way, 1, 2, 3, and 3 the other way, 1, 2, 3. Okay, as another double check, you can always count the number of stitches to the edge of the work, and as long as those numbers are even, like say 5 this way, 5 this way, it should be fine. Everyone's work might turn out slightly different because we're all beginners, but as long as it's centered, you're good. So this one, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that way. This one I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that way. So I think mine are good. If you need to pause the video to make sure yours are centered, you go right ahead. So I'm going to take out my needle there and I'm going to hold this in place, and on the other side of your work, insert your interfacing. What this interfacing does is it prevents the eye from popping out. That's one of the biggest issues with any kind of eye, safety eye with this larger blanket yarn, is the stitches in between them can be pretty big. Unless you have a huge safety eye, there is a risk of it popping out. So I like to use a huge square of interfacing. As you can see, it covers several stitches around the stitch that we put the eye in. So unless a child is an absolute ninja, well, that thing's not coming out. And then we're going to take the safety eye back. Now do your best not to drop these on the floor because they do bounce and like to get a little lost. And we're going to push until it pops or snaps. You should hear it. If it snaps twice, that's okay, as long as it snaps at least once. And we're going to do the same for the other side. Now, if for some reason I forgot to put a hole in your interfacing, I do those by hand. I'm so sorry. Just grab a scissors and gently put a tiny little hole in the center of your interfacing. So that's what the ugly inside should look like, and that's what it should look like on the outside. So now we're ready to continue with the body. So if you left your hook in, just grab your hook. If you took it out like I did, insert it back into the big loop. Just hold your work and tighten it back up, and it should be good to go. So for round 14, we're going to single crochet 2 and then decrease. So pretty much just like the previous round, except we're going to do 2 single crochets before we decrease. Now at the end of that round, this is where we're going to start stuffing. You can take out that bottom stitch marker. Now your stuffing, you might have to pull it apart just a little bit if it's a big old clump. We're going to begin stuffing, but we won't finish stuffing it until we're almost done closing up this hole. So what I like to do is take little bits of stuffing and stuff gradually and just shape the plushie as you go instead of grabbing like a huge clump and putting it in there. I like to pull it apart. It makes it less lumpy when you do it this way. Now the amount of polyfill that was included in your kit is probably much more than you will need. So we're gonna stuff it about like that, roughly. It should have body to it now until we close this up some more. If your hook fell out like mine, just put it back in there. Round 15, we're gonna single crochet one time and then decrease. You should notice that the body is starting to go this way and close up. Okay, now when you get to the end of this row, you will probably notice it's getting a little flat on the top. We don't want that, or at least I don't. You can make your plushie however you want, but we want like a nice rounded look on the top of our plushie. You see the difference? It's very, very flat. So we want to add some more stuffing as we're going and just kind of fill in those corners. Just kind of rotate the work and stuff those corners. Now there is such thing as overstuffing, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. You can stuff it however much you want. If you stuff it, I would say normally you're gonna get a slightly smaller, like a shorter cow. But if you use most of your stuffing, you should get a chubbier or a taller cow, depending on how tight or loose your tension was when you were crocheting. My tension on this one was pretty tight, and so it's just a smidge shorter than the ones that I've made in the past. Okay, it's filling out really nicely now. If it looks like a little pink ghosty, or if you're doing the white one and it's starting to look like a bald white ghost, then you're doing a good job. That's what it's supposed to look like. So on the last row, row 16, we're gonna just decrease all the way around. And as we get to maybe these last few stitches, if you notice that you need to put some more stuffing in there, then that's what we need to do. You can already see that mine needs some more in the front. All right, when you have decreased all the way around, you're gonna take your snips and you're just gonna cut. It doesn't need to be more than maybe a 6-inch tail. Cut that off. And take your fingers and hold the base of the stitch and pull on your crochet hook and just pull the yarn out. And you should have this little hole right here. We can take out our stitch marker now. Now, before we close up this hole, you decide if you want to add some more polyfill to it. I like to kind of like squish mine some and just kind of get all that polyfill, you know, evened out. Okay, and if you decide it's a little more flat in some places on the top, which I think mine is, I'm gonna add some more. Okay, before you close it up, the only thing you need to double check, the only two things you need to double check is if you can see the stuffing through your stitches, you have put too much stuffing in your plushie. You should not be able to see, you can't see it here because I didn't overstuff, but you should not be able to see the stuffing poking through the stitches. And also, if your safety eyes are like kind of doing that, without you doing anything, you've probably put too much stuffing in there. Okay, take your needle and we're gonna thread that tail through the needle. And we're gonna close this up. We're going to grab just the top loops. There's these top loops all the way around, okay? And we're just gonna weave back and forth so that we can just pull this hole through. So this way, and then this way, back and forth, all the way around. And then I like to put my finger right here. What I do not recommend, even though Bernat blanket yarn is it's one of the sturdiest ones, I don't ever like to just pull like here. You never know when your yarn is gonna snap. So I always put my finger right here and just kind of gently work it closed. And it should close right up. You won't even be able to tell there was anything there. And then we're just gonna weave that tail in. Weave that tail in. And you won't even know that that's there either. And snip that off. And now you've got the body finished. Congrats, we're ready for the body parts. For the nose, grab the mauve yarn. Now on the start of the body, I started the yarn for you on the hook, but now that you've got some confidence about you, we're gonna learn how to do that. So put your hook down. Now, as for reference, I'm actually left-handed, but I do crochet with my right hand. So if you're a lefty and it's feeling a little awkward, it will get better. So, finger guns, hold your yarn. Okay, yarn over like this. And then we're gonna bring that through from the back and grab that loop. And you're gonna put your hook in there. A little bit slower for those that need it. It's almost like you're just making a little knot, but you're not pulling it through all the way. Grab it and then put your hook in there. Now it's gonna look like this, but you just need to tighten it just a little bit. And again, if you need a even slower tutorial on this part, I do have those linked down in the description below that you can pause this video and go watch those. So now we're back to where we started with the base of the cow. We're gonna chain stitch 3 times, holding that base, yarn over, chain 1, chain 2, chain 3. Now remember, we're not going to go into the stitch directly to the left of the hook. We're going to go in the second chain from the hook. If it helps to put your thumb, like to count 1, 2, and put your thumb where you need the hook to go, that might be helpful. Single crochet. Now in this last stitch, if you need to pull the tail tight so that's not confusing, you do that. We're going to single crochet 3 times in this last stitch. And you can do this or not, but I'm going to do it to show you. I'm going to put this stitch marker in this stitch that we just worked through, just to show you that when we turn our work, we don't want to put our hook in that stitch. I'm going to put that over there. We can take that out later. You're going to work in the next stitch next to where we were just working, and we're going to go this way. We're going to single crochet once. And then in this last stitch, we're going to single crochet 2 times. Look at that cute little nose. Now to finish, we're going to do what's called a slip stitch. A slip stitch is just going to give it a nice finish look. You're going to insert it into the next stitch, but instead of single crocheting, you're going to yarn over and pull through that loop, and then pull through that other loop. So that gives it a nice round, or well, it's not round, it's oval, but a nice even finish all the way around. Now snip off your yarn. Now depending on how much tail you have left, you might want to snip it off. You probably don't need more than 10 inches to sew this on. And again, hold the base and just pull that tail all the way out. If you need to tighten the starting tail, you need to do that. I'm going to take out my stitch marker. And I actually, because there is not a lot of room to hide that tail back there, if it's super long like mine, just go ahead and snip that off. Okay, and your nose is finished, and we're going to set that to the side for assembly later. For the ears, now if you're doing the pink cow, you're going to do 2 pink ears. If you're doing the white cow, you're going to do 1 white, 1 black ear. So we're going to make our chain stitch again, just like we did with the base of the cow and the nose. And you're going to chain 3 times. Pretty much the rest of the body parts, the ears, the horns, and the patches all start like this. Now, before we continue, we're going to be making a circle with these chain stitches. If you continue in your amigurumi plushie crochet making journey, you're probably going to come across what's called a magic circle in patterns. A magic circle looks like this, where it literally starts as a circle instead of a chain stitch. Now what I'm going to show you will look nearly identical to this. The problem with magic circles is that it's very, very challenging for new crocheters. Therefore, I'm showing you an alternative, but I just wanted to make you aware for when you see the magic circle in patterns later on in your journey. Okay, so we're going to join our hook to the first stitch. You're going to insert your hook and definitely hold it with your thumb as we've been doing, and we're going to slip stitch. Yarn over, pull through that loop, and then pull through the next loop. And definitely turn your hook like I just almost didn't and missed it. Now it's very, very tiny, but you can see 1, 2, 3 stitches all the way around. So this is essentially our starting circle that we're going to make the ear from. So you're going to increase here, and then single to end. Now you're definitely going to have to use your fingers to guide here because it is so tiny. I even struggle with this as well. but it was this or learn a magic circle. Single crochet, single crochet, and it's gonna feel like you are inserting into nothing. I promise you're doing it right. See, we've got 1, 2 left. We're gonna increase in this one here, and it's so small you might have to wiggle your hook in there, and that's normal. And then here is our last stitch that we're gonna insert into. And see, even I'm having a hard time grabbing it. There we go. Okay, so this is what it looks like, and you've got this tail situation over here. Go ahead and tighten that up if you haven't already. And as we make this wider, we're gonna be able to push this through and make it right side out, if that makes sense. So take one of your stitch markers, because this is so small and can be difficult to see. Let's put our stitch marker right there. So you should have 5 stitches all the way around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for round 3, we're gonna just increase all the way around. We're gonna go from 5 to 10. Well, don't do that. Just hold it there with your thumb. And as it increases, it will get easier to work with. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, now that we have 10 stitches, you can probably take your finger and just kind of punch that out just a little bit, and look, you can't even tell that that was not a real magic circle. We started with chain stitches. We cheated. So round 4, we're going to single crochet once and then increase around. When you get to the end of that row and you've got your 15 total stitches, you can remove the stitch marker. You can leave, you don't need much of a tail at all, maybe 6 to 8 inches. Pull that through. But then, so this is your outside and this is the inside, and you got this tail situation. So I punch it back out and thread my needle, and I kind of just weave that back in a little bit. I try and weave it in and then cut it off just to hide it, and I've never had a problem with it. Just kind of go back and forth a little bit and then snip that off and punch it back out. and make another one, and your ears are done. Now for the horns, unravel your yarn. Okay, we're essentially going to do the horns just like we did with the ears, where we chain 3 and then we increase to 5 stitches, and then we're gonna do something different from there. So our starting chain stitch, once again, and then chain 1, 2, 3. If you're struggling on this part where we are making a circle out of a chain, I would recommend making your chains very, very loose. I'm trying to make mine as loose as possible because that's going to give you a little more wiggle room. They're going to be a little bit difficult to work with anyways, but that should help. Okay, we're going to insert our hook and slip stitch once again. And it might also help if you go ahead and tighten that tail just so it will get out of the way. We're going to increase in the first stitch. And increase again in the next stitch. And then single in the last stitch. Now we're going to just single crochet around these same 5 stitches, and that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now it's going to look like this with this wonky tail. Let's go ahead and snip that off just a little bit. Let's go ahead and do about a 6-inch tail is all you need. Pull that out. And we're just gonna, I like to put my thumb in there because it's so small and force it right side out. There you go. Now you got your little peaked horn, and then just stuff that little bitty tail back in there. Just like that. And you're gonna make 2 of those for your horns. Now for the patches, this is called Parfait Chunky Yarn. It's by Premier Yarns. It is a sturdy yarn. It is considered a bulky yarn, but as you can feel when you're holding it, it is smaller and it is a smidgen more, let's just say, fragile than the Bernat blanket yarn. It's fine, but it will, you will notice that there'll be little pieces of it falling off. That doesn't mean it's poor quality. It's just a really soft velvety yarn. And you will come to learn as a crocheter, if you're not wearing part of your project, you're probably not doing it right. I'm just kidding. But for real, we do get little pieces of our project on us all the time. Black leggings are not recommended. So we're gonna start with our starting chain stitch, like we've been doing, 3 times. And then we're gonna connect it once again, slip stitch. From here though, it's gonna look extra wonky because it's so soft. We're gonna increase all the way around. So right now you have 3. We are gonna increase to 6. It's gonna feel really flimsy because it's so soft. Now you should see a nice little circle. Now, if your little circle, because we are doing the alternative method instead of a true magic circle, if there's a little hole right there, we're gonna fix that. Just don't snip off your tail. We're gonna fix it with our tail later. Okay, from here, we can put our stitch marker. Now on your pattern, you have a small, medium, and a large patch. For the small patch, you're just going to increase around one more time for 12 stitches. And then cut about, I'd say about a 10 or 12 inch tail for that one. This yarn is sturdy, but if you pull too hard on it, it will break. I'm not gonna mince words here. So on this one, I usually pull this out like a little bit and then I just finish it with my fingers. It is really pretty soft yarn and almost has like this shine to it. And it's a really nice contrast for patches against the cow, but we just need to be a little extra tender with it. Now, as for that hole situation, grab your needle and thread that through. And we're basically just going, here's the hole, we're just gonna go back and forth to just close that up just a little bit. Yep, can't even see it. Mission accomplished. Okay, and then you can cut off the excess on that. Okay, we're going to repeat this for the medium and the large patches. We're going to start with our chain 3 again for the medium. Make sure your stitches are loose. Again, if you create somewhat of a hole, we can close that up. Pull that tail just a little bit and then start your increase. We're going to increase all the way around, just like we did with the small one, to go from 6 to 12 stitches. Now on the medium one, we're going to take it one more round and we're going to do a single crochet and then a single crochet increase all the way around. So the medium should have 18 stitches when you finish that round. I ended up not having a hole on this one, but if you did, you can do the same thing we did with the small one where you weave it back and forth. If you don't have a hole, you can just snip off some of that excess and set that to the side. Now for the large patch, we're going to do the same thing all the way up until that last round, and then we're just going to add another round. For the large patch, we're pretty much going to repeat what we did for the medium patch. You chain 3, join with a slip stitch. Hopefully you're getting the hang of it by now, and you can see how repetitive it can be. We're going to repeat what we did for the medium patch, except after the 18 stitches, we're going to add another round to get to 24. Increase all the way around here. I somehow managed to not have a hole on this one as well. I guess sometimes you have a hole and sometimes you don't. At least we can fix it. Going to increase around to go from 6 stitches to 12. And now we're going to do a single crochet and then increase in the next stitch, single crochet, increase all the way around. Now right now we have a medium patch. Here's another thing about the patches. You can make whatever size patches you want with the yarn in the box. You have written instructions for a small, medium, and a large. You can do whatever you want. I'm gonna go ahead and make the large one just to show people how to finish the 3 different sizes, but you can make whatever sizes that you want. So to make this a large, we're just going to add another row. We're going to single crochet, another single crochet, and then an increase. So 2 singles and an increase all the way around. Again, if you have a hole, you can fix that by weaving back and forth with your tail and then snip the excess tail off. And once you have all your patches finished, you are ready for assembly. So we're going to start assembly with the nose. If you haven't already cut off a little bit of the tail just so it folds in nicely, go ahead and do that and thread your needle. So we're going to place the nose one row below the eyes. So here's the eyes, we're going to place it here. Now I'm holding it with my finger. You can take one of your stitch markers to hold it in place, or if you happen to have another needle, you can just put that through the center to hold it in place. What you want as you're stitching around are the edges of the nose to be inside of where the eyes are, like here and here. I like to keep my finger on it the whole time, but I understand that as a beginner you might need to move it around. The directions say to insert your hook in the back loop only. So it is just that single back loop all the way around. This is going to help flatten the nose and give it just a more finished look. It gives it some texture. If you want to go all the way through, you can, but if you want the textured look as pictured in the photos, then go through the back loop only. So we're just literally sewing it to the base of the body. I want to point out a few things about sewing body parts to main bodies when it comes to amigurumi plushies. What you don't want to do is place your needle way out here, because what that's going to do is pull your piece down and be not where you want it to be. That's why I recommend either keeping a finger on it or using your stitch markers maybe up here to hold it in place. I like to go as much directly under where I want it to be as possible, even almost slightly under, and you only need to grab maybe one stitch at a time. And notice how I'm going really slow when I'm weaving these in and out. I'm not just yanking the yarn. You want to be very gentle with your finished stitches. The last thing you want to do is put all that work in and then mess it up. Okay, turning it ever so slightly. Now, if your placement is a little bit off, you still have time to wiggle it where you want it to go before you start up the sides. Once you start up the sides, that's where it's gonna go. So if you need to readjust, check where it's at, do that. For this top row, sewing down this top row, do not put your needle up here. We don't want our nose shifting or being stretched parallel to the eyes. So if you have to lift it up just a little bit, that's fine, but you need to stick right in this area right here where this row is. You should be able to let it go and it's not going to go anywhere now. Once you've finished stitching it to the body all the way around and you've gotten back to the starting stitch, just weave your needle back and forth just a few times to kind of tuck in that tail. And then we're going to snip it off. If there's any fuzz, you can just scrape that off with your fingernail. All right, still doesn't quite look like a cow. It kind of looks like a bald little bird or a pig. If that's what yours looks like, you're doing a good job. Let's move on to the ears. Where your tail left off, we're gonna stitch through this a little bit, and it's gonna give it that pinched look for when we sew it on the cow. So we're going to, just the very last stitches that we worked here, we're gonna insert our hook here and then right here and pull through. And grab the next stitch up on each side and repeat. Now to find the right placement of where you want to put your horns, you need to find where we closed up the hole, which should be the very center of the top of your cow. Now you can put a stitch marker there if you want to, or just count with your finger, but we're going to count over 4 rows on either side, and that's where we're going to put our ears. Now make sure when you do this that the eyes and the nose are directly facing you, so that when we put our ears on, they're very, very straight. Okay, so from the top, find the center and then count over 4 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you want it to be very centered on the top of your cow. You don't want it back here or up too far. Very, very centered. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you want to put a stitch marker right there, go ahead and do that. And then on the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4. And put the other stitch marker. And that way you can just double check that they are even. See, now mine, where I put that one, I'm gonna move that up 1 stitch because it doesn't look quite even. There we go. That is more even. So this is where we're going to put our ears. Now, with the open side of your ear is going to be facing you just like the ears. It's going to go pretty much just like this. Now we're going to leave this stitch marker here because when we're sewing this ear on back and forth, it's very easy for that ear to move out of place. So we're just going to sew around the stitch marker, being sure not to actually sew the stitch marker. If you want to fold it over like I just did without pulling that stitch, we're going to place it right there behind the stitch marker. So holding your pinched ear, and I'm kind of just like resting my hand on the top of the body of the cow just to kind of hold it in place so that I can focus on my sewing here. I'm going to insert my hook. You're basically just going to sew back and forth here. So after you feel like it's where it needs to be, and you've gone back and forth 3 or 4 times, we are going to weave this tail in to the back, and we're going to leave it. Just leave it there. And take out that stitch marker. And we're going to repeat for this side. Now here's the benefit of using the stitch markers. I want to make sure that my ear is directly straight with that ear that I already have. I want to make sure I'm not putting it too far back or too far forwards. I want them to be even. As long as they are even, you'll be good. Okay, now I'm a lefty, so this is going to be a little bit awkward for me. Take that tail and we're going to put it right where we put that other tail, and we're going to tie them together. Whenever it comes to body parts, I like to tie them together. You can weave them in and out like you did the nose, but this is a body part that's highly unlikely to come off. Whereas like if a child is like grabbing the ear, or say we had arms or legs and they get picked up by those single body parts, we want to make sure that they are in there really, really good. So I just do a knot and then tie in, or weave in, excuse me, both of those tails. So if it looks like a mouse, you are on the right track. So when it comes to the horns, you are going to place them in front of the ears, like to the side, but also in the front. So looking down at your cow, wherever you've placed your ears, you're going to place your horns. You don't want your horns way back here. You don't want them too close together up here. You want them closer to the ear, slightly forward and next to. That's where we want them. Now you can use a stitch marker on this, but honestly there's only 5 stitches. So you can just, with your cow sitting up and using your hand to hold it in place, you can just hold that horn in place and stitch around. Remember what I said about grabbing stitches too far out. It's going to shift whatever you're trying to sew on. So try your best to sew as directly underneath the body part as possible. See how I almost have to pick up on it just a little bit just to make sure that I'm grabbing the right stitch? That's fine. I'm even having to push the ear down so I can get where I need to go. yarn is done, and we're going to do the same thing that we did with the ears. We are going to just feed this to the back and just leave it there, and we're going to repeat for this side. Making sure that basically wherever you put this horn, you're going to put the other one in the same spot on the other side to try to make sure they are even. As long as they are even, that's the most important thing. As a side note, a troubleshooting side note, when you're sewing pieces on, if you accidentally grab this same stitch twice, whether it's on the working piece or the body, that's fine. Nobody's gonna know, and you're not even gonna see it or notice when you're done, because I'm pretty sure that's what I just did, and nobody is gonna be able to see it. So feed this tail to the back, and we're gonna tie these off. And we're gonna tie these off. So the last step is going to be to sew on our patches. Now again, you make whichever size patches you want with the yarn that you're given, and you put them wherever you want. However, I do really like the big one right here, about somewhere right in there, because I just like from the front that it's a very nice little visual. And another good thing about the patches, as far as where you sew them, you really can't mess it up. I mean, you can put them literally anywhere on the cow and you're not gonna mess it up. Again, you can use stitch markers to hold the patches in place if you want to. I'm just gonna use my hand, and if you didn't notice, there was this little unevenness here when we finished up. This is going to be hidden when we sew it together. We're gonna insert our hook. It's not a hook, it's a needle, excuse me. Getting tired at the end of this video, in that starting stitch there, and it's gonna kind of bring it together a little bit and kind of hide a little bit of that unevenness. And you're just gonna sew all the way around, just like you did with the other pieces, trying to sew directly under the body part being sewed on the best that you can. Now I will say you need to be a little bit gentle and careful. Notice how I'm grabbing this yarn and pulling it like this, because see, there's a little piece that came off right there. This is normal. This particular yarn loves to just leave its little, this yarn loves to have little pieces fall off all the time. That's completely normal. Just be very gentle. I have had this yarn break on me before when I was not being gentle, and that's That would be a real shame to have it break. All right, when you finish your patch, if you're like me, you're probably gonna need to clean off your workspace here with all the little floofies. See, this is a flat piece, so we're not really worried about this kind of piece falling off versus what I discussed with the ears and tying the pieces together. So I'm just gonna weave these ends in like we did with the nose. So you're going to repeat for your other patches, and you can put them wherever you want. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you how to do the nostrils on one of the prototype colors because I filmed doing the nostrils on our strawberry cow and my camera wasn't on. So here we go. You're going to thread your scrap piece of velvet yarn on your needle, and we want to make sure that the nostrils are parallel. As long as they're even, that's what matters. So I'm going to come in from the bottom down here gently, and I'm going to try to come out right above where the nose, top of the nose is, and I'm going to leave a tail about like that. Okay, and then I'm going to come down just about 1 stitch worth right here, and then I'm going to try and come back out this way in about the same spot, parallel to where this hole is over here. And if we have to redo it, it is what it is. This is very tricky to get even, to be honest with you, so if you have to redo this, don't feel bad at all because I have to redo these all the time. This is my least favorite part. I think I got that even, and then you're just going to put your needle as close to parallel as this hole as you can and bring it back out over here. Well, there we go. Oh, first try. There we go. Now don't pull your yarn too tight this way or it's going to make your nostrils sink into the nose. Now you might like that look and that's fine, but we want our nostrils nice and visible to kind of give it that cute cow look. Now what we're not going to do is tie off the yarn, make our little knot right here at the nose. I'm afraid that's going to add too much unnecessary bulky look. So we're going to move our yarn down further on the body and then do our knot. Just move it away from the nose. Gentle, gentle, gentle. There we go. I'm so sorry if you hear my dog whining. She's at the back door and she wants to be let in. There we go. So hopefully, even if you had a bit of frustration in the beginning getting started, that you had fun overall and you enjoyed it and you learned a lot. That was the main purpose of me designing these kits and these patterns, was to teach others how to crochet. And so friends, I hope that you had a good time. I hope you learned a lot. And if you want more updates on future kits or Ginger Patch Designs to-dos, make sure you follow me on my socials, especially here on YouTube. And also make sure to tag me in your makes on your socials. Friends, I hope to see you again. Bye. This clip is to show you some troubleshooting if you're having a hard time getting started. Right here I have my 6 starting chains per the pattern for round 1. Now for round 1, it says that you should have 14 stitches total when you finish. If you are having a hard time getting those 14, either you're ending up with 12 or 13 and you've done this many, many times, hang on. So I'm going to go ahead and start just like usual. I'm going to single crochet my 4 across. Okay, and then we're going to do our 3 in the end. And we're not going to go in that stitch. Remember, we're going to skip it and go in the next one. So here's what you can do. If you are struggling with getting the right number of stitches, the most important thing on this step is that you have 14. Even if those 14 are not in the right spot. If you can at least put these 3 right here to create that curve, it's gonna be fine. I promise you it's gonna be fine. And honestly, the whole purpose of these kits and this tutorial is for you to learn. So the purpose is not to be perfect. The purpose is to learn. Okay, so if it takes you being a little bit wonky on the start to learn and get the hang of it for the rest of the pattern, it's fine. So skip that one, go over here. Okay, if you're struggling with getting the right stitches, if you need to add a stitch where it says do a single, then do that. You can put it here or you can put it further down the row. It doesn't really matter, okay? Now, we don't normally do that. When you get into more complex patterns, that's not just a simple little chubby. When you get into patterns that have arms and legs and tails and all of that, you can't do this. But this is why I chose a pattern that is so simple and repetitive, so that it's gonna be okay if it's not followed exactly. Okay, so you can either add it here or you can crochet down a little bit and add the increase here and then finish out the row. As long as you have 14, you'll be fine.